Hello. Hey guys. We're starting our artist talk live video, which I do every week, talking to different artists from all over the world. And today we have a special guest, and actually he's very close to me because you know how I love animals, how I love environment and nature, and I've been always attracted to artists that whose work is related to the beauty of the planet and the diversity of living creatures. And I'm glad that today's guest works related to the wildlife and animals. Nick Slider is a hyper-realistic artist, and you know, it's so easy to take his artworks for photography because they look so real. It's just incredible, and I'm very fascinated by his technique, and he's paying tribute to the wild animals, especially tigers and lions, and he's appreciating the genius of nature. So let's see if Nick is here, and we will have a chat with him. Yeah, adding Nick.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very good. This is exciting for me. I don't know, you might know this. I do artist talks too with other artists.
Seriously?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you knew this. So I've done, I think 6 or 7, but on the other side, I interview artists I really like. So it's cool
Yeah,
for me
that's
to be on
exactly
this
what I
side.
do. You know, and everybody asking me like, Natalia, you're an artist yourself. Like, why you're interviewing other artists? I said, like, we have to support each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very encouraging to talk to other artists and just learn about how they practice and how they make their art. So yeah, I feel very good. I'm usually more nervous when I have to interview them. I feel very at ease now being on the other side.
That's good. So you're now on the other side. So
Yeah.
maybe next time you're gonna interview me.
Yeah, maybe we could set that up next time. Exactly.
so, so where are you now? Are you in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'm in Philadelphia. I just moved into my new studio the past 2 days, but my Wi-Fi isn't set up yet, and I was a little nervous to try this there. So I'm at my this was my home studio I was using for the past 3 months until I moved my studio from New York. Um,
So why?
so
What happened? Why did you move from New York? You spent like a few good years there. Are you planning to
yeah,
go back?
so I had been there since 2015. I lived in Manhattan. I had a studio there. I loved it working there. And when COVID hit, everything shut down. And for those of you who don't know about New York, it's all very, in Manhattan especially, it's all very crammed together.
Yeah.
It's all public transit. No one really has cars. And it was like the worst place to be for COVID, especially when the case rate was so high. And my lease ended in May. So, I just decided, you know what, even if it's just for short term, I should probably get out of the city. Um, and my family lives in Philadelphia, so I went here for 2 months and stayed with them to kind of see what would happen. And then when I realized this is going to be more long term, I decided to move my apartment and my studio too.
So
So
it's amazing. So you get a chance to see your family and also to create more art.
yeah, so I kept making art. I stayed with my family and had like a little easel I got to keep painting, so I would stay sane. And then I ended up renting an apartment and working from there a little bit. And now finally I have a studio again, which is I make really big paintings and they were all up in New York. So to finally have them with me and to work on them again feels so good.
Yeah, I read on Instagram. Initially, you were a little bit afraid to make large scale paintings, and then you decided to make a move, and so you and now
Yeah.
all your paintings are large scale.
Yeah, I think initially I was a little afraid to do bigger pieces. And then once you do one, for me, I just couldn't go back. I love big paintings now. And then I think for a lot of artists too, starting out, so I just started to paint really big, but I couldn't sell them. And so I stopped. And then finally I got more clientele and was able to sell these bigger pieces. And so now I only like to paint big.
So what is the largest size that you've ever done?
I largest so far was a 5 foot by 7 foot piece, and luckily that was for someone in Brooklyn, New York, so it didn't have to travel too far. But
Oh,
that
that's
becomes
good.
when you make these big paintings, shipping becomes an issue too when
Yeah.
you're
Or
selling it to
otherwise,
people.
but you can always roll them, no? And
That's mostly
send
what
it
I
to
do.
them.
Yeah, I mostly it cuts the cost down a lot. So when I do the bigger 5 or 6 foot paintings, I always rolled them up. But yeah, so I was hoping to have my studio so everyone could see these bigger ones, but I still have some.
Yeah, what is on your, I can see like some beautiful tiger and the lion in the
Yeah.
background.
So yeah, this one here will be going to a gallery in Europe, and that's a lot of people have been. I haven't really been able to work for a couple months, so I'm finally telling people, hey, the paintings are coming again, and then this is a commission piece for somebody.
So as I realized, you do lots of commissions nowadays.
Yeah, I almost only did commissions starting out, and I would just paint anything. And I started then to sell my own pieces. I started to do these large scale tiger pieces and lion pieces, and they started to sell really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So now I only do commissions um, if I've never painted it before and I find it interesting. So last year I did this guy owned a prize winning bull and he wanted a commission piece of it, and I'd never painted a bull and I thought that would be pretty cool. Or a lot of times what will happen is people will want a tiger painting and they sell fast. I don't have many. So I'll just say, hey, let's do a custom tiger painting for you. Something like that.
So for example, if I weren't to have a portrait from Nick Slider, so what should I do?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Unfortunately, portraits, it's more, a lot of them too. It's if I like the image they want to use or something like that. For portraits, I don't do too many custom portraits anymore. Usually it's more like an artistic inspiration thing for me. But I had one lady, she had this image that she just loved of this model in black and white, and she sent it to me and I really liked it. So I said, yeah.
I saw that one. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm very reactionary when I paint. If I see something and I'm inspired by it, I usually will go for it. But I'm fortunate enough that I'm at the point where if I don't want to paint it, I just say no. But I used to, early on, a couple years ago, I would take anything. I was painting people's grandmothers. I was cats, anything I could.
But wildlife is dominating in your artwork. So why animals and why lions and tigers? Are you going to expand this circle?
Yeah, it just sort of happened when I was a kid. I was obsessed with lions and tigers. Lion King was my favorite movie. I won an award in kindergarten for drawing a lion, and that was sort of when I realized I had this thing I could do. I remember I would collect magazines of tiger paintings by different wildlife artists. So it's just this weird fascination I had when I was a kid. And then when I got older and I decided I wanted to pursue being an artist, the first thing I painted was a tiger. It just sort of that's all I really knew.
Do you still have that painting? Do you keep your memories?
Yeah, it's somewhere. I actually it's a painting by someone else's painting, so I couldn't really sell it, but I have it. My folks have it somewhere. And then the first original I did that was of my own content, that was of a lion, and it's just sort of I always associated making art with animals. But as my first solo show in New York, I did a big, large-scale self-portrait, and so I got more into portraiture too after that. I really love painting people. I've been to Africa several times, and I've done a lot of portraits of people from Africa. when I was there. And so, yeah, I tell people my favorite thing is just creating something that's alive on the canvas. Because for me, there's a moment when it starts to come alive and it feels like there's something alive in front of you. And that's like my favorite moment when making art. So generally speaking, if it's something that's a living, breathing subject, I enjoy painting it.
So, like, how does your painting start? Sometimes I think you use photographs to draw the details, and you also, I noticed, play a lot with the contrast of colors.
Yep.
So, what is what is your key technique? What is the most important to achieve this live kind of a movement? Because they don't look static. All your paintings, they look alive.
Yeah, when I started out, I was more obsessed with detail, and I think the more I paint, the more I enjoy manipulating color to make it feel like it's actually in front of you. So a lot of my big paintings, when you look at it up close, you can really see the brush strokes, and it looks more like a painting. But then when you step back, it all kind of comes together like an illusion. And I love when people, they feel like they need to go out and touch it. That's like the biggest compliment to me, is when they want to touch the painting. And it's just been through a lot of trial and error. I'm self-taught, so I had a big bucket of paints that my mom had, and I just started painting. And so one of the things that I learned as I met other artists was I use acrylic paint, and I paint a little differently. I don't really blend my paints at all. I mostly do very watered down, diluted paint, and layer on top of layer on top of layer.
Yeah, because usually like the artists that I know using the hyperrealistic technique, they use oil paints
Yeah.
to achieve this flat surface. Have you
Yeah.
ever tried to use oils, or you still like to stick to acrylics? Because yeah, it's very difficult to achieve this flat surface with acrylics.
I've tried oils a bit. The way I paint is very I'm not patient. I'm just always painting and bouncing around, almost like
I don't believe you're not patient. To create something like this, you need so much patience.
Okay, that's true. It's funny though, because for me it feels like a very fluid, almost like I feel like I almost have ADD when I paint, because if you'll watch me, I'm always bouncing around to different parts. And you can see my shirt here. I'll dip in paint and rub on my shirt. And that expanded now, like all my stools, everything I have is covered in paint, because I'm just always dabbing and mixing and painting. And with oil, it's a slower process.
Yeah, you have to wait till it dries.
And then you paint it and you wait till it dries. And so the way I learned is it was just too different for me. And I also like that I don't know most people think I paint in oil and are kind of shocked when it's acrylic. And so I kind of like that.
So you created your own technique by diluting acrylics the way that they can hold so many layers and stay flat at the same time.
Yeah, I think one of the most unique things I do is I use a dry brush technique a lot, which is where again, my shirt, people don't believe me. I'll just brush almost all the paint off. I'll dust kind of color over top of color. And one of the things I do with it, I use a lot of...
I think you can auction your t-shirt. It looks pretty cool.
A lot of people have asked me about, like, how do I get one? And I'm like, I don't want to auction off a t-shirt, but maybe one day. But yeah, so what I'll do then, I use a lot of fluorescent coloring and bright coloring, but I use very thin layers of it for highlights and things like that. And so I've just sort of developed these techniques over time, learning on my own. And it wasn't until I had an art student come in who wanted to see how I paint, and she was like, I haven't learned any of this in my art classes. And that's when I realized, oh, I think I paint a little differently than most.
Yeah, but it's so amazing. You're a self-taught artist. To learn to do something like this is just incredible. Like, hands out for you. Because was it difficult to break through in an art industry, being a self-taught artist without having any background? Like, how did people what was
Yeah.
their reaction, like the collectors, because they always scary. Oh, the collectors will not buy your paintings if you don't have artistic background. So
Yep.
how did it work for you?
Yeah, it was a couple. I think it was a plus and a minus that I didn't really have a background. The positive was that I had no preconceived notions of how things were supposed to happen. So for me, it was just I love to paint and I want to do it as much as I can, so I have to make money doing it. And so I think a lot of people who come out of, say, art school have these rules they think they need to follow, and I just didn't care.
Yeah.
To me, it was like I need to make money so I can keep painting, and that was a big positive for me. One of the negatives is I had no contacts whatsoever. I had no connections to galleries. Fortunately for me, though, this was a dream of mine since I was a kid. So I just was determined and painted a lot and practiced a lot and made sure that I had work that I thought people would enjoy. The way I sought out the gallery route, like a lot of artists do, and that I got into galleries, but I wasn't really selling anything. And I remember I talked to an artist early on who said, if you could figure out the internet, do that, because galleries sometimes such a pain, such a hassle.
Yeah.
And I always remembered that.
Taking crazy commissions.
Yeah, that was the big thing. He was selling his paintings for a lot of money, but he said between shipping it to the gallery, them taking half, he said, I don't make that much. So I started to post things on Instagram, and it was when I started painting bigger, I realized I got a little bit of traction. People started to share it, and then I started to sell online. And I did a big solo show in New York. To me, it felt big. I was
What is it with a gallery, or you organize it by yourself?
So that one it was a salon that also had a gallery in it. But it was on 34th Street near Penn Station. So it was a great location. I had never had a solo show before, so it was a big deal for me. So I made a ton of work. I had it, and I didn't sell anything. And it was great and fun and really cool, but I was like, okay, now what? And then I started to sell online. And I thought to myself, what if I just forgot the gallery thing and just focused on like getting people to notice me online? And that's when everything changed. I realized.
So you're also good in marketing, not only painting.
And that all of that too, I tell a lot of artists, I say, take it seriously. That was when, before, to me, it was like, I have to do this. And then it was like, okay, I want to get good at this because I can sell my art this way. And so I would research, I would look up like what's working, what's not, what do people seem to connect with. And I sort of viewed my page as like, what would be entertaining for people to see me paint? That's when I started to do, I have videos of just the image, and then I'll walk in and start painting it. And that was a thing that I realized, oh, people like to see this.
Of course, the process.
Yeah.
And I like the descriptions which you write for your posts. Very interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, that's really what changed things. And I also realized too that we do so much online. Collectors started to find me, and they could care less whether I had an art background, whether I was connected with a gallery. They more liked that they were speaking with the artist directly. So really last year, that collectors started to find me, and it just sort of took off. And I realized because they see you, they meet you, they talk with you, they're willing to pay and get your art directly to you and not from a gallery. So I still connect with some galleries here and there, but I almost do everything online now.
So would it be mostly Instagram, or you use some other platforms?
Mostly Instagram, yeah. It was actually initially Facebook, and then Instagram became a much bigger thing for me. And this year I wanted to get into YouTube. I haven't. It would be a big shift. I was actually like ready to get into YouTube right before COVID hit, and so I'm like, now that I have my studio again, I'm like, all right, let's get back into that mindset.
YouTube is very powerful. It's very big, but it's a lot of work and a lot of effort to get the views and to make people follow you. Instagram is easy in that way.
Yeah, and especially I feel like I have a good flow with Instagram, and YouTube would be a whole different thing. So we'll see. Hopefully this year I'll
maybe
get up
next step. Yeah, I noticed you set up goals at the beginning of each year. So you set up 3 goals, or at least that's what you were talking about on
Yeah.
Instagram. So
Yeah.
one of the goals was for 2020 to paint more horses. What was this about? And where are those horses? Did you paint
Yeah, they haven't
any?
happened yet. Yeah, my goals kind of got shook when COVID hit. I got into this thing. People would ask me like my future plans, and with art, things change so much. I would tell them like I have no idea. You know, I didn't know I'd be here 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So I decided to start setting really, really descriptive goals where I knew at the end of the year whether I hit it or not. And I did that 3 years ago, and it just was very satisfying to know,
Mhm.
oh, this I did, and it's a good marker to know I'm pushing myself forward. So this year, yeah, one of my goals was I did this horse commission last year, and it was by
Mhm.
far my biggest post. Um, and so that was one of the things was I want to do another horse painting. And that's kind of how I paint, just for fun, because I want to see, how people
Mhm.
react to it. And
Why
I
not monkeys, for example? I think monkeys are so cute.
what's that?
Why not monkeys?
Monkeys. I did a
I think
monkey
they're so
painting a
cute.
while ago.
You
Um,
did?
yeah, I did it like my first year painting. I did a guy was obsessed with monkeys and asked me to paint him a monkey. And that's where if someone asked me to do a commission piece of a monkey and I found it interesting, I'd
Yeah.
probably say yes to some extent, just because again, I've only been painting for about 6 to 7 years now, and so I enjoy exploring new things. But yeah, painting a horse. Hopefully, I'll now that I have my studio again. Hopefully, I'll do another big horse painting coming up.
Yeah.
We'll see.
What about birds? Have you tried to paint birds?
Yeah, I did
The
an
colorful
eagle.
parrots.
Yeah, I did an eagle painting for somebody. I'm actually working on a commission painting of a peacock
Mm-hmm.
for a relative of mine, and that's one that we had kind of talked and figured it out about 6 months ago. And then I was away from my studio for 4 months, and so I told him like, hang with me. Once I get my studio back, I'll be able to get back to it. But yeah, I did birds. Birds, I also found those to be very interesting, and yeah, so we'll see. We'll see if I do some more birds in the future. I'm sort of like I have so much fun with exploring my subjects. I have no
Yeah,
idea
because you've been painting only
what I'll
for
be
6 years
Yeah,
professionally.
yeah. Well, 2000, so 7 years now. 2013, the spring of 2013 is when I
So you
started.
started in the kindergarten, and then you stopped, and then you decided, oh, that now it's time.
Yeah,
What was the
so
trigger point when you moved to New York? Did New York play this role, life-changing role
um,
in your life?
sort of. So yeah, it was. I drew a lot. Like I drew obsessively as a kid. It was my favorite thing to do. I drew a lot of animals. I drew a lot of portraits. I just was obsessed with drawing. My parents couldn't punish me because I loved to go to my room and just draw all the time. And I that was like my thing. I always did art. And then in school I got into other things, and I hated my art classes because I just wanted to work on my own stuff. And so the idea of going to art school for me sounded terrible, where you like have to go to art classes again. And so I just sort of like quit cold turkey. I
Hmm.
I didn't really do any art. I did caricatures, the fun.
Yeah,
So I did that. That was my summer job
that's
for like,
completely different from what you're doing now.
oh yeah, yeah. I love doing them. It was my summer job for like 7, 8 years through school and college. But that was the only art I would do were these caricatures. So it's funny in college, like no one really knew I did art because I just sort of stopped doing it. And I pursued something else entirely. And I turned 25 and I didn't like what I was doing. And it was my parents actually who said, you always want to be an artist. You might as well give it a shot. And at that point, I had never really painted. I was always a little scared to paint. I did a bit in art school, but we didn't do much with it. And so painting was always this daunting thing to me, but I always wanted to be a painter. I was obsessed with paintings and like wildlife artists. And so my mom, she did painting on the side as
Hmm.
like a hobby, and she would sell stuff at fairs here and there.
So it's your genes.
Yeah.
That's where it's
Oh, yeah.
coming
Yeah.
from.
My
Now we
mom's very
understand.
creative. My dad's very creative too. He's the first one I remember drawing. He would draw me this toy alligator I had when I was really young. And then eventually I started drawing it, and he was like, "You're better than me. So from now on, you do the drawing."
Oh, sweet.
Um,
Your parents
yeah,
must be proud of you.
yeah, I think so. They're very. They always wanted me to do this. I'll talk. I'm very lucky. I'll talk to people who, you know, one of the first questions they'll ask is, "What did your parents say?" Because
Yeah.
most parents are like, "That's not a stable career."
Yeah.
But I think because I did it so much as a kid and so young, they sort of knew like this is all I ever wanted to do. Anything else was
And
plan
I
B
think
for me.
because they also enjoyed drawing, if, for example, they
Oh yeah.
didn't do it, then it would be difficult for them to understand.
Yeah, they love art. Whenever we would go on
Yeah.
vacation as kids, we would visit art galleries. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but it was always a big thing if they could collect a print of somebody. And so I think because of that, I never viewed being an artist as a crazy idea, because in our house, art was always this really great thing. So yeah, so when I was 25, I just got this tub of paints from my mom. I'd started an animal painting of a tiger when I was like 17 in school, just on the side. I just like started this tiger painting. And I remember
Which materials did you use? Which paint?
oh, I
What
don't,
kind
it
of
was
paint?
just, I had a bucket of like random acrylic paints. So people will ask me what brands to use, and I still to this day, I tell them like all different kinds. I have the most expensive acrylic paint and the cheapest acrylic paint. And I just figured out ways to use all of them to my benefit.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. For the
but
first layer, maybe the cheap one, and then you go more
it's
expensive.
all, yeah. One of my favorite paints is this really cheap fluorescent orange. And because it's cheap, it's really thin, but it's so good for, I do these highlights with it, especially for tigers, and it really makes it pop. And so, yeah. And that's, I think, again, the whole rule thing. My rule is like, if you make it work, that then do it. And so I don't care if they're cheap paints, expensive paints. It doesn't matter to me. If it makes it do what you want to do, then,
Now you can afford it also. It's fine.
yes, that helps too. Yeah, that was the one biggest fear of COVID was actually, I go through paints and paintbrushes a lot. I clean my paintbrushes a little, but I just like constantly go through them. And when COVID hit, production and sales kind of stopped on stuff, and I realized, oh no, I need to like ration my paint more, because it might be a long time before I can go to an art store again. But luckily they've
Yep.
opened up, so that
I
wasn't
was
too much
also
of a problem.
scared that I wouldn't be able to keep on ordering my art supplies, but
Yeah, same here. Yeah,
but
exactly.
thanks to Amazon, at least Amazon
Yep.
was working well, so I
Yep.
could get the essentials.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw just someone posted a question.
Okay.
How long does it take to create an artwork, a painting like that? So let's talk the one behind you.
Yeah.
How long does it take to make one portrait of a tiger or a lion like that size?
So this is probably the biggest question I get, and I never answer, for two reasons. One is that's sort of like my secret, is just how long it takes me to do it. And then the other is, I'm sure you know this too from making art. Some things will click for me and some things won't. So I'll be working on like this tiger painting, I'll be working on something like this, and it just clicks and I can crank through it really fast. And then for some reason, I'll work on another one. I had this one tiger painting last year that I loved the end result, but I just didn't like it for the longest time and just kept working on it
Mm-hmm.
for, I don't know, like 2 months. And then finally it just clicked and I finished it. So it's also hard to know. I've tried to count my hours, and it's hard to know how long anything takes. I work on maybe 5 to 10 paintings at once. I bounce
Okay.
around a lot. So because of
That's
that,
why it's very difficult to calculate it.
yeah, I'll have a painting for 3 or 4 months, but I'm not necessarily working on it for 3 or 4 months. So,
Do
yeah,
you make videos like slow motion of, like, actually it's fast motion?
right,
The,
right, time lapse.
yeah, time lapse, exactly.
Yeah, so I actually in New
That would
York,
be interesting to see how you start and then the final result.
yeah, I've been asked to do that a lot, and I haven't yet. It was very sad because in New York, the week before COVID hit, I had planned to move into a much bigger studio. And part of my goal for that was to have one wall designated just for time lapse videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very excited. And then COVID hit and that all fell.
Yeah.
But luckily, my new studio is pretty big. that I have here in Philadelphia. And so I'm hoping to do, that's actually one of my goals now. I had to do new goals. And so one of my goals this year is to just do one time lapse and put it out there, get it on YouTube. And so I can.
I think it's very achievable. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a complex goal.
No, it's not at all. That's for my goals. I like having some that are like, it just gets you to do it so that, you know, by the end of the year you did it and can cross it off the list.
So we're looking forward to see it very soon this year.
Yeah, so if I don't have one by the end of this year, you can tell me like, hey, you didn't.
I'll remind you.
You need to get on that.
You forgot about your goal. We discussed that.
Yep.
So is it true that you stopped sketching? That you now start painting immediately without making a sketch?
Yeah. Again, like I'm always kind of evolving how I work. So I used to sketch out. I used to never use a grid. I would sketch everything on the canvas first, and then I think it was just one time I just started painting and realized I didn't really lose anything by not sketching. Sometimes I'll still sketch it. Sometimes though, I'll just start painting right away. I also use a grid system now because for me, I tell anybody the most important thing first and foremost with a realistic painting are proportions, because that's the first thing I notice. If a proportion is off, I see it immediately and then it doesn't look real. So to me, I want to get them as perfect as possible. And the bigger you get, it was just harder to do it without a grid. So I started using a grid with my paintings, and actually now I've done 2 now with a projector, and I might move closer to doing a projector all the time, these bigger ones.
Yeah, it saves so much time.
Yeah, and that's for me. I like making new paintings. A lot of people, like, they'll do one and they're very attached to it. When I work on a painting and I'm finished, I want to move right to the next one. So I enjoy making them not as quick as I can, but I like making as many as I can. And so that's to get it started for me. The speed is important. So if I can get it started quicker, I'll probably, you know, do that.
Yeah. And where do you take the images of wild animals from? Do you take from internet, or you travel to the parks where they live in their natural habitat?
I've only been on one safari, unfortunately. I just started out looking for like Google oh shoot, what's it called? I can't remember, but like image or copyright free images. That's it. Yeah. I would just Google them, copyright free images. And then when I got onto Instagram, I realized there are all these wildlife photographers out there who get amazing images. And I just started contacting them, and almost all of them say,
so they don't mind sending you images.
No,
That's amazing.
You go through my search, it's like all lion and tiger pictures, because I'll look for them throughout the day, and I'll save it if I like it, and just message the photographer and say, hey, I would love to use this. I'll give you full credit on social media. Is that okay? And generally they're pretty open to it. So that's been really cool. I kind of view it as a collaboration because I tag them and I try to push people to see their photography. I was hoping to get to, it's the biggest wildcat reserve in the whole US. And a client I had, he visits there regularly. He's a tiger dentist. So the majority of what he does is works on tigers' teeth. And so he goes to this place a lot, and he invited me to come with him. So I was actually hoping to go there this year, and that fell through. But I want to get more into taking my own images. I just haven't been able to, just because of.
I think it will be such a new, different experience, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. That was when I went on safari. That was a cool experience to start taking my own images, and I've done that. With some of the portraits I've done a lot of my own imagery for that, and that's always a lot more fun. But I actually enjoy my cousin, who I'm really close with. He's a photographer, and so I know that it's a whole nother art form, and to get really good at it, it takes a lot of time and effort. And so I like to collaborate with other photographers because I know how much it takes to get to that level. So that's actually really fun. Yeah.
It's also time consuming to get a photograph right, and then
that's when you have all these amazing photographers on Instagram, I'm like, I might as well, you know, see if I can collaborate with them since their images are out there. So
Yeah. So when you paint like a portrait of animals, like what is the favorite part? What do you like to paint the most? The
Um,
details, which detail, maybe eyes.
Yeah, I always start with the eyes, and I didn't even know that actually. A friend of mine pointed that out, and I said, yeah, it's because if I get the eyes right, for me, the rest of the painting will follow. So
Mm-hmm.
I almost all my paintings, I make the eyes completely finished before I'll start on
Mm-hmm.
anything else. But the favorite thing for me is actually it's not I don't love making it all entirely perfect. I love when it starts to come alive, and that's usually far before it's done. And it has to do with the eyes and some of the detailing, but usually before it's finished, it just feels like it's alive. So I've actually toyed with the idea of starting to do sort of unfinished paintings where
Mm-hmm.
you can tell, you see the realness in it, but you also see that it's not completely rendered.
So
So
how many layers does it usually take to achieve a result like this?
oh, I have no idea. It's I
Do you
couldn't even.
paint in layers or you paint
Yeah,
with details like, or for example, first eyes and then you do the nose only and then it all comes together like a puzzle, or you do
yeah.
eyes and
It's
then layers?
it's like a puzzle, and that's how I work. I'll get sections finished. Usually, what I'll do, with any artist, you have to figure out how to stay motivated. So I'll pick out like my favorite pieces of the painting, and I'll do that first. Because then if I really like the painting, I'm gonna finish it.
Mm-hmm.
So like for this lion here, I
Mm-hmm.
loved the mouth, and
Yep.
so that's one of the first things I did.
Teeth.
The teeth, it
Yeah.
has a drip coming down. So one of the first things I did was made that mouth look real, because then I really wanted to finish it. For this tiger, it was the eyes. It has these
Mm-hmm.
crystal clear eyes, and so I made sure I had those exactly right. And then I like want to finish the painting because I enjoy that part of it. But it's always changing for me. Sometimes I need to mix things up, and I'll almost do an entire layer of the painting just to get the color on. I'm always like trying to like trick myself to stay motivated by doing new things when I paint.
Do you have any pets at home?
Any pets?
Yeah.
No, I thankfully too, because I've had to move around so much lately. I When I was in New York, I really thought about getting a dog because I would just go into my studio every day, and
Yeah.
I have this
Really
like
cute.
romantic idea of having a dog with me in my studio all the time. Like I go to paint in my studio, and I have my dog just sitting with me all day.
You like
So
the
I
idea?
was like, yeah, I was thinking about that in my new studio, and then thankfully when I had to move because of COVID, I'm actually really glad I didn't have to move a dog with me. Um, but we'll see. Everyone's quarantining here, and
Yeah.
so I
Are you
thought it'd
planning
be
to go back to
nice.
New York afterwards once it's all settled down?
I have no idea. I In Philadelphia, I signed a short-term lease because I have no clue what's going to happen when me and my brother both lived in New York, and so we moved, and uh, we were just sort of flying by the seat of our pants because we didn't know what was going to happen. We moved into an apartment for 3 months just to see if maybe we'd move back, and then we realized this is going to keep going, we decided to sign a lease for 6 months. I was just in New York to pack up my studio, and it was weird to be back because in Manhattan, it's still like it's a little better, but you see lots of things are closed down. There's not a lot of people out
Mm-hmm.
there. And so I'm just sort of waiting to see what happens. I miss New York a lot. I would love to go back, but right now it doesn't quite make sense for me to go back.
Yeah. Do you feel like in New York there is more opportunities for an artist like you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was. I moved to Philly because my family's here, and I'm really close to my family, and it felt right to be with them during all of this. But in terms of an art scene, New York is the place to be. And luckily for me, like I said, almost everything's online, so it hasn't really changed much for me.
Mm-hmm.
But and you'd asked about this when I started doing art. There's something about being in a city that respects artists that really encourages you to sort of reach for the sky
And
with your
this
art. So
atmosphere, there's
yeah,
so
so
many artists and
yes, and
museums and
yep.
exhibitions, so much happening.
Yeah, and being in a city like New York where there's musicians there, there's like there's artists there, anything creative, you can go there and make it. There's actors there, you can go there and make it happen. I had a lot of friends from the music scene and the Broadway scene. And so to be in a city where that's pushed, it just encourages you to realize like, this is a thing I can really do. This makes it possible. And so I attribute a lot of my success to being in New York, because I know if I grew up and went to school in central Pennsylvania, and I know if I stayed there, I never would have kept pursuing it. I would have just given up because I wouldn't have thought it's possible. But being in a place like New York, you realize like, oh, it's entirely possible to get success from this. And it kind of pushes you to do that. So that was one of the best things for me. I talked to a curator like my first couple months of painting, and the first thing he said was, move to New York City. He said, get out of Pennsylvania, move to New York City. And so, so we'll see if I go back.
And how did you manage your time to have time to paint, to create, to do the commission work, to socialize, to make contacts? How do you work?
That, I mean, I still wrestle with that. The whole time balance. It used to be that I did side jobs and would have to paint at night. And then eventually I went full time and I painted a lot, but then I realized I had no social life whatsoever. So actually one of the biggest transitions for me was I used to paint always at night. I would paint from like late afternoon till like 4 or 5 in the morning and then sleep, just because that's when I like to do it. But then I had no social life at all. And so about 2 years ago, I changed that and kind of had a more 9 to 5 schedule. So it's nice to have an studio now where it's like going to an office where you go in the morning, till dinner, and then in New York, I would like go hang out with friends at bars or go see a movie with them or stuff like that. So
because I think once you socialize, you have a couple of drinks, then I think it's impossible to be precise with
oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah,
with animal
faces.
faces.
People love to like, they'll drink or smoke or whatever while they paint. And I can't do any of that. I have to like be very focused.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if you do abstract, maybe it works well.
Oh, yeah.
To throw the paints and go crazy. But if you need to paint details, no, it's not gonna work.
No, I'm always afraid I'll screw up a painting if I drink too much. But yeah, a tough thing for me too was, you know, when you're an artist, you're so secluded that you're by yourself all the time. And for me, I'm an extroverted person. So I realized after a few years, like, you're alone a lot. So when you're not working, you need to be able to go and see people. And so that kind of helped me transition and get that work-life balance.
So what advice would you give to artists like you, self-taught, or someone who wants to break through in the art industry?
The first thing I would say is just share your work and do that as much as possible. If you don't have a website, get a website. I built my own website when I started out. I don't think it was that good, but I at least had something up. Get on social media, share your pictures, share photos of you as an artist. I say this all the time, and it just baffles me. Artists are so afraid to put themselves in the picture, and I tell them all the time, people buy art from you. They want to know who the artist is. They want to see who they are. That was one of the biggest shifts for me, was I started to include myself in the pictures, and people are like, oh, that's Nick Sider.
I just saw some comments. Nick, you're so cute.
Oh, well, yeah, that has happened too. It deterred me then from wanting to share pictures of myself.
So they like not only your art, they also like how you look. So.
Yeah, or even that, you know, that's another thing that's happened is like they love the painting clothes. That's become a thing. Which
and
is,
your clothes.
Yeah, that all adds to it. And that's why I tell people, like, put yourself out there. So that would be piece number one. And then number two, I would say, is take social media seriously, especially with this whole COVID thing happening. I told you I've been doing these artist interviews, and we'll talk a lot about like what's happening with galleries. And it's a scary time for galleries because, you know, we don't know when shows are going to become a thing again. But for a lot of people, if they sell online, it's really taken off because everybody's buying things online now. And so if you're an artist starting out, pick a platform and take it seriously. Do research, look up hashtags, get good at making content that's enjoyable for people, because you know, that's something that I think is really going to take off for artists in the next few years.
And how can you trust people on social media? Did you have any problems? For example, you send a painting and then you don't receive the money, or first, do you make any legal contract before sending a painting? Like, or how first you receive the money and then you send the painting? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean that, starting out, that was always a very scary thing for me. Luckily, I've really only had one issue in the whole time because, again, people buy so many things online. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
become more normal than they think. So what I'll do, I use one app. I use Square app. It's really good. They take a percentage, but it's really good because it's all right there for you. They get an invoice, so they get a receipt, so there's some paper trail, and it's credit card information. It's all very legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never really had an issue. I always take, for those of you starting out, I've talked to artists who have had issues with this. I always take half up front and then half
Mm-hmm.
when it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
Half up front because sometimes you can't really trust people, and so
Yeah,
you
someone
can't.
can change mind. The painting is ready. I'm like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
want it.
I know artists. I don't think that's happened with me, but I know artists where they'll do the painting and then the person changed their mind and
Yeah.
they won't pay them. And
Mm-hmm.
so always take half up front. And then for me, I try to never take the full amount up front because I'm motivated then to finish it and get the half afterwards. So that's how I do it. It works well for me. But yeah, it's especially when I started doing international stuff, that became a little scary because I realized these clients live in like Thailand and I've never met them before.
Yeah.
But that's again because of social media. They see me, they know I'm a real person, they know I sell all over the world with other people. So, that helps a lot when selling your artwork online. So, and then the last piece of advice I'll give, because I always tell this to people too, make sure you love what you paint or what you make or what you create. I've met a lot of artists who love the idea of being an artist, but they don't really love doing it. And for me, that was the biggest thing is I love making these big tiger
Or
life.
maybe they paint something what they don't enjoy painting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think most successful artists I've met will say, production is one of the most important things. Clients want to know you can keep making these paintings for them. And so if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to make a lot of art. And so that's the other thing too, is like, make sure you're making what you really, really love, because I think that's what you'll be the most successful at.
And when it comes to establishing prices, like, do you increase your prices every year, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, pricing's such a ridiculous thing. I did an
How
interview.
do you estimate according to the size, or
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I
so
think
difficult to evaluate art by
very
yourself?
difficult. Yeah, I talked with she's a very successful artist I love, Iris Scott, and we talked a lot about this sort of thing because she kind of started out the same way I did. Um, Pricing is, I remember I read a book on pricing and they had a lot of stuff about it. And then at the end, it was sort of like, but at the end of the day, art is subjective and there's no
Yeah.
rules. And I was like, great, okay. So for me, I started out pricing, I decided I want to make as much artwork as I can, and I'd rather sell more at a lower price than sell one piece for a lot of money.
So how
Um,
much would be, for example, the painting something like this? We can see the lion face.
yeah, so right now I'm 10,000 is kind of like that was my goal for last year was to reach the 10,000 mark, and that's sort of where I like to sit now, around like kind of around that area. Part of that is because of the scale and the amount of time it takes, and another part of it is supply and demand. These tiger paintings and lion paintings, I have a list of people waiting for them, and so I've been able
It's a
to
good
increase my.
price. Yeah.
I've been
I,
able to
I,
increase
I, I
my.
I think you should sell it for more, to be honest.
And I hear that all the time. And this is back. I used to sell for less. And again, for me, one of the big pluses is I don't deal with the gallery. So
Yeah.
to get that price at a gallery, you have to sell
So
for
people
40,000.
here, we have
Um,
to buy Nick now before he's very expensive. I
well, and
promise you,
yeah,
it's a good time to buy.
that's part of it too. Sandy, my friend's on. Shout out to Sandy. I love you. She just had a baby. Sorry.
Oh,
I just saw
cute.
her comment. Yeah, I realized early on that it's easy to go up in pricing. If you start to go down, it's very bad. Your clients don't like that, especially when they're investing in your art. And so I just knew I'm going to be painting the rest of my life. I want to be able to keep increasing my pricing. And so that's when when I started out, I was selling stuff for like a couple $100. I realized last year, 2 years ago, I was selling the same size of tiger paintings for $2,000. because that's
lucky guys who bought it.
And to me, that was a lot, maybe 3 years ago, but to me, that was a lot of money, you know? And so that's where I just realized you can always keep increasing. And the biggest thing too is, and I tell this to artists starting out, I could price it for $100,000, but if you don't know the people that will pay it, it doesn't matter. You need to know that clientele. And so part of that too for me has been, as you get to know more collectors that buy more serious artwork, you can increase your pricing. And so it's sort of been a gradual thing for me of more people find me, more collectors find me, and I get to kind of increase it naturally. And another thing for me too, because I'm sort of new to all of this still, I get nervous when I'm working on a piece that's worth a lot of money. And so I remember the first piece I sold for $10,000, I had to ship it to them. And it was very nerve-wracking for me. And I realized, like, I'm actually really happy I'm selling it where I am because I'm comfortable with that. And that's another good thing too is because I've been doing it gradually, it's kept the stress levels low. So, you know, I think it's whatever works for you and what price you can comfortably sell at. But I read too many stories about artists who sold for a lot of money early on, and then in a year or two, people got tired of their art and they were kind of stuck because they couldn't keep selling at that level, and they just sort of went like that. And I decided I never want that to happen. I want to have a lifelong career. And so I'll make
it's
room
better
for
to go slow, gradually.
Exactly. Yeah.
To be consistent.
Yeah.
Do you have a manager who helps you with all the bookings and requests?
No, I need a manager. I have someone who's helped me with studio stuff. I had an assistant who did more managerial stuff. I did a solo show that I ran myself in 2018, and so I hired an assistant for that. My brother, he does a lot of marketing ad stuff, and he's helped me out with more serious proposals and things, projects I'll get. But that was actually one of my goals this year, was to hire somebody. And then
Good. Now I already know two of your goals.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And I'm glad I didn't, because that would have been difficult with the move. So now that I'm getting more settled, that's one thing I'll need to start looking into again, is getting somebody, because, you know, that's like anything else. When you get more success, you get busier, and, you know, my biggest job is to paint, but now I have all these emails and contacts and things I need to take care of. And so that all kind of builds up. So hopefully soon.
Hopefully. So hopefully next time I speak to you, you're going to interview me.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's so funny. I thought that's why you reached out, because you knew I do these artist interviews. So
that's funny.
But yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is really
Thank
cool.
you so much. It was so nice talking to you and so inspiring. So.
Yeah, and I didn't get to ask you before. My friend who's Ukrainian said this. Are you Ukrainian?
I'm Russian.
Russian. Oh, okay. She said you might be Ukrainian, and I have Ukrainian on my.
My family name sounds a little bit Ukrainian, but yeah, I'm from Russia.
Yeah, she asked me. She's from Ukraine, so she asked if you were Ukrainian.
Oh, say hello to her.
I will. Yeah, that was my friend who just had the baby that was on.
Oh, congratulations to her.
There she is. She's talking again. But yeah, thank you so much. It was nice to be on this side and be interviewed. And yeah, I love meeting other artists and talking art with people.
Great talking to you. Have a great day.
Yes, you too as well.
Ciao.